This is chapter 10, and it's called No More Hospitals. It's time for hospice. I've spoken at length by now about how happy Mommy was finally coming to the condo, finally coming to where she thought she'd always been, home at 6241 South Washtenaw. She had been eating. She was seemingly fine. She was happy. She was happy being with me. And she used to say, "You know what, babe? It's okay if I can't walk anymore. As long as you're with me here, it's okay. I don't mind." And I think she really meant that. She didn't care if she couldn't get out of the bed, and she didn't care if she had to go through what she had to go through as long as we were together. And Mommy's nurses would come in, as they usually did, and they would examine Mommy. But I noticed that more often than not, they were finding it necessary to call an ambulance, out of the blue. And Mommy would have seemed fine to me before they came, but they would take her vitals, and there was something that they didn't see, something that they saw that they didn't like, and they wanted to call an ambulance. And Mommy hated it when that would happen because it was happening more frequently, and Mommy always associated the ambulance with her going somewhere where I wasn't going to be. And it never changed. Mommy always believed that wherever she went, she was at 6241 South Washtenaw. But for some strange reason, she knew that even if she was going to Washtenaw in the ambulance, that if she wasn't at the condo, that meant that I wasn't going to be staying with her all day and all night. I don't know how she put that together, but she did. And when she did, she would be devastated. She would cry so hard, and she would say, "Pookie, please don't let them take me. Please don't let them take me. I don't want to go. I want to stay here. I want to stay home with you. I don't want to go to the hospital." And I would say, "Mommy, we have to go. They think something might be wrong. We have to go." And she would just beg and cry and look so pitiful, but we had to go. And when we would go get to the emergency room, we'd see some of the same doctors, some of the same nurses for the same things. And they would want to take x-rays, or they would want to do some type of imaging, and they would want to draw Mommy's blood. And that was always a nightmare because it was difficult to find a vein. They would always say that Mommy's veins would collapse. Then they would have to try the other arm, and they'd be sticking her in the other arm, and then they'd go back to the original arm, and just back and forth, and just constant suffering for no reason, because we had already been told that there was nothing more that could be done. So, I was thinking, okay, so why are we going through this? Why is Mommy being subjected to this? You've already said there's nothing more you can do. Is this for monetary purposes? What the hell is this for? It's just making Mommy suffer needlessly when she could just stay at home with me. And so ultimately, I talked to my brothers, and excuse me, I'm sorry. I talked to my brothers, and it was time to talk about no more interventions, no more hospitals, no more ambulances, no more none of that. Because even when Mommy was in the hospital, she was used to me changing what I called her panties, which was really her adult diapers. And when the other nurses or a CNA would do it, They were just doing it. It was so matter of fact, and they'd be doing it, and they wouldn't be talking to Mommy. They'd be talking to each other and joking around with each other, and Mommy be looking at me with a sad face and looking at me like, will you help me? I don't want them to change me. They don't care about me. And Mommy was right. They didn't care about Mommy. Mommy was another patient. She was just another patient. She wasn't their mother. When I changed Mommy, I was changing Mommy out of love and respect. And that wasn't happening at the hospital with any of these folks. I'm sorry again, I'm going to take a drink. Please excuse me. And I told my brothers, oh God, this chapter is so hard for me. I told my brothers, I don't want to do this like this anymore for Mommy. I just don't. So they thought about it, and my older brother, he was reticent to talk hospice. My little brother, he was more open. I was open. I guess I was just open to having nurses come to the house and I would get more help. I'm not really thinking hospice. I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to have more nurses. I'm going to get more help. I'm not going to have to subject Mommy to the ambulances in the hospital. The nurses, basically the hospital is going to come to me and Mommy. That's how I'm thinking. Maybe I didn't want to think about it any other way. I don't know. I just knew I couldn't subject my mother to any more of that, and so my brothers decided that they were going to sign something called a DNR form, which is a do not resuscitate form, which basically means if your loved one is going to leave the world, then they're going to leave naturally. There will be no pounding on their chest or using machines or doing anything like that to try to prevent them from dying. They will just die naturally. However they're going to die. No medical interventions of any kind. And my brothers made it clear to me that, they said, Pookie, this is going to be a lot harder than what you've been doing. Because now you're going to have to deal with the pain, with everything, and you're not going to be able to call anybody to take it away. You're going to have to handle all of it. And I was looking at them like, well, I thought that's what I'd been doing, but they were right. It was going to be a different situation, because if Mommy looked like she was dying, I wasn't going to be able to do anything but just be with her and hold her or whatever I had to do. So I just said, whatever I have to do, I can handle it. I'm going to be fine. I can deal with it for Mommy's sake. So we found a hospice team that came to the home. They were wonderful. They let us know that they would be there day or night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They could be contacted and they would come. There would be no, we'll be there tomorrow or we'll be there in a couple of days. They were going to come within an hour or so. And they were also going to give me medication for Mommy. Now, I administered meds to Mommy, but nothing like this. This stuff had a skull and crossbones on it. The syringe was tiny. I could only give Mommy like a drop of this stuff, and it would knock her out for like 7-8 hours. And then they told me, you have to be careful, you have to wear gloves when you administer it, and then you have to make sure that you wash your hands very well even when you take the gloves off. And I said to myself, what the fuck is this that I'm going to be giving my mother? But then they just said this is going to help her to sleep and she's not going to suffer anymore. And you just give it to her if she's screaming in pain. because now this is about her comfort level. And I said, okay. So it took me probably a couple of days to use the medication, but eventually I did. And when I did, I saw that it knocked Mommy out for long periods of time. And I was so uncomfortable with that because I wasn't able to hear my mother. My mother wasn't talking to me anymore. There was no screaming. There was no nothing. There was no, when I would leave the room, there was no, I love you, babe. And then she'd blow me a kiss and I would say, I love you too, Mommy, and blow her a kiss. There was no more of that. There was nothing. There was silence. There was just silence. And so one evening, Mommy was screaming, calling for Jesus, calling for Daddy, calling for me. And I didn't give her the medicine. And about 3 a.m, I let my mother suffer like that for hours. And about 3 a.m, I called my sister and I was crying. And I told my sister, Mommy's been screaming for hours. And my sister said, did you give her the medicine for the pain? And I said, no. And she said, Pookie, why? And I said, because if I give Mommy that medicine, she can't talk to me anymore. She won't be able to tell me, babe, I love you, babe, and throw me a kiss. And my sister said, Pookie, you better give Mommy that medicine. Give it to her right now. And I was crying. And I felt so ashamed of myself. I felt ashamed that I was making Mommy suffer just so I could hear her say those words to me, because I knew that if I kept giving it to her, I would never hear those words anymore. And so I went into Mommy's room and she was looking at me like, I love you so much. I love you so much, Pookie. Please take the pain. She started saying, please, Pookie, please take the pain away. Please, Pookie. And I kissed her. I kissed her forehead and I said, don't cry, Mommy. I'm going to take the pain away. It won't hurt much longer. And I said, just hold on. I'll be right back. And I went and I put my gloves on, my rubber gloves, and I took out the syringe and I gave Mommy the meds. And I could tell they were starting to kick in. And I left the room and I heard this little voice say, I love you, babe. And she threw me a kiss and I turned around and I said, I love you too, Mommy. And I never heard that again. She didn't die then, but I never heard those words again. Because when she would wake up, she would start screaming after the 7 or 8 hours, and then I would give her meds, and then she'd go to sleep, and that was the process for, I guess, the next week or two. Now, during all of this time with hospice, Mommy and I were given a grief counselor, somebody to help us through everything spiritually, and our grief counselor, his name was Evan. He was very sweet, very kind. He listened. He listened to Mommy. He listened to me. He would pray with me. The nurses were very nice. They were compassionate. They were very competent. They were kind. They were loving. Whatever I needed, whatever Mommy needed, they were right there, just as they promised. And I was just completely outdone. It was so difficult not to call an ambulance, but I knew if I called an ambulance, Mommy would be subjected to more pain, and it wasn't going to result in anything any different than at any other time. They weren't going to say anything new. Mommy was for there, and it was better for her to be with me, or at least I was shown how to prevent the suffering. I'm so tired. I'm tired. This has been the most exhausting chapter of all. This is the end of chapter 10.